I'm Charlie James. We're in my gallery. We're at Libby's fabulous solo show here at the gallery in Chinatown.
Called Timeless.
Called Timeless by Libby Black. And if we look at the work around the show, it's a combination of, well, we have the sculptural items, which have the world's simplest list of materials: paper, acrylic paint, and hot glue.
They're thick paper. They're not super thick, not like cardboard at all, so there may be a couple layers glued to make the structure. They're hollow. They're hollow pieces.
So looking around at the work in the show, it's obvious to me that the iconography of fashion somehow got indelibly marked in your brain. Potentially, maybe at a young age, maybe talk a little bit about that.
Well, I mean, growing up, I was always taught if you look good, then you are good. So,
And where'd you grow up?
I was born in Toledo, Ohio, and then we moved to Texas when I was in high school.
Texas must have been...
Texas was like a whole other country. It wasn't like moving to another state, but Texas for me, you know, I got to high school and on the lockers in high school it says, "We're not snobs, we're just better."
Was this Plano, Richardson?
Plano.
Oh, the legendary place.
So for me that was like kind of like, oh, this is totally like, we're not snobs, we're just better. And that kind of stuck with me for a little bit too, in terms of like having these things and owning these things and the facade of looking good and acting good.
So it's hard not to see the work in the show without the lens of this current climate that we're in, right? Where markets have collapsed and faith in financial institutions is gone. And it's funny, these things, they attract me the way that the real objects would attract me.
I did a Louis Vuitton store, I think in 2003. I redid a whole store at Canola Garcia Gallery in Lower Haight, and Louis Vuitton called me down 3 weeks later after the show opened and said, you're making a profit off of our stuff, you need to shut down. And I was like, this is not a profit. And they were worried because they thought their customers were going to be confused. And I was like, your customers are confused, they're idiots, you know? So they never did anything since, and they didn't even really do anything then, but they kind of slapped me on the wrist, I suppose. Stepping back and looking at certain things, like the old Vogue magazine covers from the 50s, and kind of looking at what we were looking at in fashion, and then also looking at now, like the girls' blank stare into nothingness, and it is still about nothingness, but being seduced by it at the same time.
I think your work is tailor-made for this town. I think the level of response to the work that we've seen tonight is indicative of that. So, welcome back to Los Angeles, and it's of course my pride and pleasure to have you in the gallery.
Thanks, Charlie.
If we could cross the street and not get killed.
We have about 100 artists represented tonight.
All right.
They're all local Southern California artists of all media.
This is the oldest nonprofit art organization in Los Angeles, that is major. And how many years has it been around?
Well, coming up in 2010, we are going to be 85 years old.
Whoa!
So anything 85-year-old in LA is glacial.
Seriously?
This is our annual holiday show. It's one night only. It's called Aurora, and we have all works on paper for $200 each. So you can get some really amazing bargains tonight. It's a lot of fun. A lot of artists here, a lot of collectors here. So.
Very cool.
Gallery 825 is like a phoenix since Peter's come aboard. It's risen from the ashes, and he's created a new energy, a new sensibility, and you hear a lot about Gallery 825. Some of the most important curators in Southern California always talk about Gallery 825. And I think that's what it takes, because it offers a wonderful venue for artists who are not represented by other galleries.
decorative ceramics and humans and animals and
In combination.
and draw as well. So it's a constant back and forth of drawing and sculpting. I often use found photographs or old photographs, but change them dramatically so they become figments of my imagination or from dreams or people that I know.
These are from two different series. This is from a series called Alter Ego, and this is from a series called Female Photographer Seeks Portrait Subjects, where I found subjects online. We would collaborate together on this kind of fantasy of the portrait and how they wanted to have their portrait taken, and I would dress them and go into their closets, and we would drive around together and find locations sometimes.
So wait, so you put an ad out, they responded and said, I want my picture taken, and then you guys got together and you like said, what's your fantasy? Like what were you? Oh my god, I would totally pose for you.
Well, you should.
Oh my god, I would totally do that. That sounds so fun.
So I did this series first, and then I did Alter Ego, and it was kind of pushing even further the fantasy of, it's actually my fantasy of being a celebrity photographer. So I found these people who have an alter ego, this kind of alternative life, and we photographed them in that life.
And was this guy's fantasy to be in the superhero?
This is him in his house, and he's actually an art dealer, but he also is in amateur wrestling.
This looks like a very simple piece, but really there's a lot behind it. I mean, it looks very simple, but it's not simple at all.
Basically what these are barcodes inked on paper, and if you think of a barcode as basically just an alphanumeric writing system, there's content in these patterns that we can't get at. We know it's there, and we can't see it. And this whole series are Japanese death haiku, and it's a tradition for haiku poets that at the moment of their death, they say a haiku and then they die.
Are you serious?
I am.
Have they been practicing that their whole life?
I imagine so. They
Right?
probably haven't planned in advance. This piece refers to a very chill wind blowing through a forest in winter. And so, you know, the way the very minimalist lines are coming across the page, one could almost imagine them as trees and as though you're looking at a forest. And then there's the content of the forest being in the barcode. And then at the same time, it being ink on paper, the ink behaves in its own way. So you can start to see these shadows and these dark spaces and light spaces. So that gives it yet another reading and another life. So if you kind of go back and look at it, you can almost see a landscape happening in the ink of maybe some clouds or a range of mountains in the distance.
And then to hear that it's their last dying words, I mean, that actually, like, that's very intense.
She was already wet. Yeah, touch the air. She was ready to ride the third rail. You see the devils in the detail. You see the devils in the detail. Cross the T, that's a Y. You see the devils in the detail. You see the devils in the detail. Cross the T, that's a Y. You see the devils in the detail. You see the devils in the detail. Cross the T, that's a Y. Ooh, why? Ooh, why, why, why? Devils in the detail. You see the devils in the detail. Cross the T, that's a Y. You see the devils in the detail.